So I went to this one practitioner, and he was telling me it was genetic, and you're getting older. And I realized after that time, that was the last day I ever stepped foot into a doctor's office because I realized that these people are just lying to us. So people have to be aware of this because it's a bait and switch. And they know you're not going to put a vaccine in your body, but you still, for some apparent reason, I have no idea, will still put pharmaceuticals into your body. They told people if you didn't wear a mask, we're going to put you in jail. If you didn't take a vaccine, we're going to put you in jail. If you think of 2020, it's the same exact playbook 100 years later. It's orchestrated by the same people. The next generation is probably going to be the most aware generation. This is why they are trying to do the AI and
Yeah.
ChatGPT and push that because they realize that so many people have woken up to the nonsense and lies, and it's only going to continue.
Right, a big welcome back to the Deprogram series on the Live, Love, Learn podcast. And I am welcoming back a return guest, long overdue, Matt Roski, co-founder of Cultivate Elevate, and a passionate voice for deprogramming and stepping out of the matrix and taking control of your life. So this is going to be a really fun and interesting conversation because Matt has got so many examples of where we've been programmed, where we've been lied to. So we're going to find out a bit more about his journey and his biggest aha moments and his lessons learned along the way. But I want to tell you a little bit about Matt's company, Cultivate Elevate. For those of you that haven't checked it out, check out his link below because he has amazing high integrity supplements and education, and is also, I'm sure we'll hear about today, his new book on electroculture. So, Matt, I mean, we've had quite a few conversations over the last few years, many of which have been taken off many platforms. How are you doing, and what is happening in your world at the moment?
Well, I'm good. And actually, on that topic, yeah, we've been censored many times, me and you. And then also, my pages are all censored. You know, they were asking me for a code if I want to log into Instagram now. I have
Oh,
to get texted a
same here.
code. Yep. And then YouTube recently took down. I just decided to throw a video up there because I was like, you know what? Maybe they don't censor as much anymore. So I put up a video and I talked about ChatGPT, how people are using ChatGPT, and how they need to go read more books and spend time with nature. And YouTube decided to say that that was medical misinformation, and they took that video down. And then Rumble just bombards me with lots of ads too.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. A lot of these platforms, you know, people don't realize that a lot of people are like myself and yourself are trying to put the information out, but a lot of the information gets blocked because these platforms either hide things off of Google so you can't search them, or these platforms limit the views so that people can't find the information. And it's unfortunate, but the good news is the truth keeps going out. That's for sure. They can't hide it all. That is for sure on that.
Yeah, it's really challenging. And I think, we really appreciate anyone who's listening on whatever platform you're listening on, your patience, because it is really frustrating. And, things like my conversations with Dane Wigington on geoengineering, you just can't find them. It's ridiculous. Even you search for it, it doesn't come out. But these people, there's so many people like Dane who are doing so much great work. You're doing so much great work. And I've been running this deprogram series because for me, so much is about people really understanding the mind control, the subliminal messages that are everywhere, the control mechanisms that often we don't even realize. There's some that are very obvious, but there's a lot that aren't. So, where did your journey, Matt, for people that are new to you, where did you start with realizing, hang on a minute, what we're being told isn't right?
So about 15 years ago, when I was 25 years old, I went to the doctor, and the doctor told me that it was genetic and I was getting older when I was having health issues. And I thought, I'm 25 years old. Like, I've only been here for 25 years at that time. So I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And everything that he fed me or told me, I was like, I really don't believe this. Like, I'm having stomach issues. I was having bloating. I had like a hernia that I thought was a hernia.
Mm.
And I was having these issues, and I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. So I went to this one practitioner, And he was telling me it was genetic and you're getting older. And I realized after that time, that was the last day I ever stepped foot into a doctor's office because I realized that these people are just lying to us. And the biggest thing that really, went down the rabbit hole was after realizing that doctors only get 4 hours of nutrition in 10 years of schooling. So if you're asking your doctor, how should I eat or what should I do for my health or how should I improve my heart or my brain or my skin or any of these things, they have no idea because they haven't taken any nutritional classes. And that's horrible when you think about it because for the other 9.5 years, they were taught pills, they were taught radiation, and they were taught to cut you open. And
Yeah.
so that's why people don't realize that when they're going to these people as, asking for advice or experts or whatever, they don't know anything except for pharmaceuticals. So that was kind of like the first eye-opening thing. And then as time passed, we all went through the pandemic and they, telling people to take vaccines and all of these stuff. Now the big thing is parasites and,
Yeah.
ivermectin, methylene blue, nicotine, which are pharmaceutical products as well. You
Exactly.
know, so all of these things I've realized when I look at this, I go, okay, it's just a different form. They just make something big and then they get people on board. But yeah, through the journey, it's just kind of seeing the other side. And me and you, as we've talked about many topics, like World War II and the other side of vaccines and the other side of things, you really see the other side and go, wow, I've been lied to.
It's quite fascinating, isn't it? I mean, it's one of the best things I like about getting older because I'm just really enjoying learning so much that actually starts to make sense instead of being taught to memorize a whole load of facts that didn't make sense. And I'm so pleased that you raised the subject of things like ivermectin and methylene blue, because either in the so-called people that are on the awakening journey, we get shot down so much for saying things like that. But as someone who's been working in holistic care for more years than I care to remember, the fact that the alternative media have so brilliantly brainwashed people to just keep taking for themselves and their poor animals things like ivermectin and methylene blue that are both pharmaceuticals, and yet in the same breath that they're arguing against others, it really does come down to evil genius in terms of the misinformation on all sides now, do you think?
Yeah, so the ivermectin one is just a diabolical plan by the Rockefellers. They
Yeah.
planned all this out in 2010. They knew that people aren't going to take vaccines after 2020, so they'll take a different pharmaceutical product. And it's interesting because people always say, well, ivermectin's safe. But when you look at the side effects that
Yeah.
include blindness, liver failure, infertility, and all types of horrible things, you start to wonder, well, then how is that safe? And people will say, oh, well, I purchase it from a different country. Well,
Yeah.
the Rockefellers, their medical system, they own the entire medical system across the world. So when people are like, oh, I buy it from here, it's owned by the Rockefellers over there. So, this is quite a plan. And like you said, when you get into the alternative health, push and whatever else, they are big on this. You go on Rumble, they got ads for it. I mean, when you got
Yeah.
ads for pharmaceuticals on an alternative health platform, you kind of sit there and wonder why are you being marketed this something. And it's interesting because people get all crazy with the parasites, which is really just heavy metal
Oh.
overload. You
Yeah.
got tons of metals in your body, and ivermectin has heavy metals inside of it. So people are just taking the same stuff and then they'll go, oh, well, it fixed me. Well, it suppressed the symptoms like all
Yeah.
antibiotics do. So like you said, it's like people have been fed one thing and then they've got all these, we'll go podcasts, which have promoted this and got it into a $32 billion industry, which is backed by, this was crazy when I looked up who makes ivermectin. I found Merck, I found Johnson and Johnson, I found Pfizer, I found Bayer. I found all the pharmaceutical companies who are making the vaccines in 2020 are the same ones making the ivermectin. So people have to be aware of this because it's a bait and switch. And they know you're not going to put a vaccine in your body, but you still, for some apparent reason, I have no idea, will still put pharmaceuticals into your body. And that's the thing is when I was looking at some of the ingredients in there too, found polysorbate 80, which, breaks down the whole blood-brain barrier. I
Yeah.
found GMO cornstarch, maltodextrin, artificial flavors, hexane, glycols, all these weird petroleum-based things. So it's like you have to think about this. And the biggest thing you always hear is, well, it came from from nature. Well, it
Yeah.
came from a golf course in Japan. And we all know that that golf courses are sprayed with pesticides. So they took a toxic substance off of the golf course and resold it to the people as it came from nature. And when I got into parasites, because this runs deep, you find John D. Rockefeller, 1901. He is the one who tells people they need to take dewormers, which are made by him, which is crazy, and spray it all over their cattle and their animals and their bodies and all of these things because he said that if you walk on grass, this is great. If you walk on barefoot grass, parasites can allegedly jump into your body. And it's like, well, you're disconnecting people from nature. Then he started saying
Oh, and
that
don't touch a cat or dog either, whatever you
yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah. That's what I was just going to say. Don't
Yeah.
touch the cows. Don't touch the cats. Don't touch the dogs. You know, don't even look at the chipmunks out there. You know, because they might jump and get you. So you know, this is the fear. And then same with the meats. You know, I'm
Yeah.
getting into raw meats and eating raw meat, and they go, oh, the parasites are going to get you. There's not a single documentation to ever show that a parasite can transfer from one to another. And you can go back all the way to the 1700s when they were writing all this stuff. So you see this, and people don't realize that they're just being duped. And then when you tell them, because I've done these videos telling people they've been duped, they get mad because you're bursting their bubble. That's what it
Oh,
is. They've
yeah.
gotten on this, bandwagon that this is the solution. And it's like you're all avoiding the cell phone towers and vaccines. The companies have not been, there's been no justice for all the people who are now dead from the vaccines, number one. And number two, the 5G technology, which keeps getting put up, more towers, more everything, people don't look at that. And it's sad because, once again, like I said, people have gotten on a bandwagon and they believe it. And then on the other side, they're just not looking at, like opening their eyes and looking at what's actually happening outside.
Yeah, I mean, I've studied parasitology literally for the last 40 years. Not quite that long, actually. I'm not quite that old, 35 years. And it is interesting. It's quite complex because I've studied parasitology quite a lot in nature as well. But a lot, so humans, animals do get parasites, and we're meant to live with parasites to stimulate our immune system. But of course, if we're stressed or unhealthy, and so many things can cause that, they get out of whack. And in nature, there's so many examples of animals self-medicating to get rid of parasites if they start to become a burden. And there is a thing, only if they start to become a problem for them. And I think for me, this black and white thinking that we've been told it's this or that, even in the alternative health, as long as someone can give a disease like Lyme disease, for example, and I'm not negating people that are suffering with a lot of symptoms at the moment, but when you actually go down to the root causes of diseases, you're so right. There's so many basic things that they're distracting people away from. What do you think, Matt, in your journey? What you've covered so many different topics. It's incredible. That's why I love your channel so much, and you link them all together. But what do you think about this obsession with making people thinking it's A or B, left or right, black and white thinking?
It's really just like kind of like a separation thing. That's kind of how I think about it. I mean, it's kind of like when people separate down their body.
Mm,
I think this is because they've been programmed by the medical system for such a long period of time. Let's say, for example, their liver is not doing well. Well, then they go to a liver specialist who doesn't talk to any of the other specialists, and then they don't talk about the whole body, as a whole. And I think that sometimes, unfortunately, we've been programmed to just believe like, oh, my liver's not doing good. I got to focus on my liver, but it's like you have to focus on the entire part of the body. And like you
yeah.
said, when you break it down and make it so simple, if you look at what you're eating, what you're drinking,
Mm.
what you're living in, if you have poisonous Wi-Fi, poisonous lights, clothes, whatever it may be, or not addressing the heavy metal issue, then, you start to break it down and they've given us all these terms. This is the other thing. Like there's so many terms out there to make it so complicated. Like I've got this and I get people, they'll message me, they have a disease. I've never heard of this disease. It's mostly just you're poisoned, and
Yeah.
the easiest way to say it is if we just kind of make it simple, and we stop dissecting our body down to like, this is exactly, this is exactly, this is exactly, then we can kind of go, oh, wow, okay, well, this kind of makes sense. And a perfect example of this, there was the Dr. Pottinger study where he had a whole bunch of cats. He had
Hmm.
900 cats. He had 900 cats who ate raw milk, raw meat, and cod liver oil. They all were healthy as can be. They didn't need any dewormers. They didn't need any antibiotics. They didn't need any chemicals. They needed nothing because they were just eating how nature intended. On the flip side, when he fed them cooked food, like kibble, which you don't know cats, cooking up their food before they eat it or anything. But when they fed them cooked food and kibble and processed foods and all this stuff, they had all these health issues. And then they started giving them dewormers and all
Yeah.
of these things. So you see that nature is so simple. If we just follow the way that nature intends for us to live or for animals to live or whatever, it's really easy. But it's been so overcomplicated. And I think that's the major flaw that we're suffering from because people are suffering from pretty much all the same things. They're just poisoning their body. And if we just understand that if we just understand to get rid of the poison, we can heal. It's so simple. And that's been my journey, just realizing how simple everything really is rather than how complicated, that we've been programmed to be.
I couldn't agree more. And it's exactly the way I work with animals and people because it's actually the number one thing is to stop putting the thing that's poisoning you in the first place and then repair. And, I had a lovely podcast, which I will go up this week with this company that do fermented soil-based microorganisms. And this company are amazing and what they do, but the legislation they have to work with, and it's because they're working with nature and because they're putting back what we've all lost with that connection. It's so sad how difficult they make it for people who are actually really providing good solutions to actually get their work out there. Now, I've got to ask about the electroculture because obviously we know how much our food system has been messed with. And again, when you look back on it, we're so good at making excuses, us humans, sort of why it's not our fault. And in fairness, I think most people wouldn't look at, say, salmon as a food and understand how toxic farm salmon is because we're not psychopaths and we wouldn't do things like that to the salmon. But in terms of the electroculture, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learnt there that have really given you an aha moment, and how does it link into our health?
Well, when you get into this, just having the abundance of food, I think is a big one. Just bringing around all the pollinators, the bees, the birds. I have every bird, like everything known to man. I have bees, I have honeybees, I got sweat bees, I got wasps, I got tarantula wasps, I got chipmunks, I got squirrels, I got snakes, lizards. I can name every single thing that comes by me. And it's wild because I film them. I film every single thing. And that's the thing is when we support the energy of the earth, with electroculture, not only does it support the land, because even around my neighbor's house, their gardens are going nuts.
Yeah.
They're probably just like, what is going on? Why are our trees blossoming 4 times in one year? So it's wild of what can actually happen once you understand energy. And this whole electroculture journey for me has been that. It's led me down the rabbit holes of free energy, how we can use frequency, sound, color, all of these things, they all play a part. And it's really just electroculture is really just understanding nature and really just replicating nature. Like when we're placing the antennas into the garden, we're amplifying the energy and then also replicating nature, like trees.
Mm.
Trees are antennas. So all we're doing is making more antennas and placing them into the garden. But yeah, for the most part, it's been just a remarkable journey of where it has gone and what I have seen. And people still send me pictures to this day of, big cucumbers and big potatoes and avocados that are 3 times the size, and all of this was purposely pushed away by Monsanto,
Yeah.
the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the people who want to control your life. They don't want you having healthy food because, once again, it goes back to what we just talked about. Health is simple. If we eat healthy, we heal. If we eat a whole bunch of poisons, then we can't figure out what our health problems are. So electroculture has really been a journey on that. And it's just really shown me just a different light. And that's why I'm finishing up my book as we speak right now. And it's just going to have so much information. But it's really that book is really to just counter, once again, the lies that we have been sold on so many things because electroculture relates to water,
Yeah.
it relates to food, it relates to energy, each thing, the education system, it's all connected. It's all just kind of like a spider web. And once you understand one, then you start to see all the rest. Like all the things Monsanto has done. with their seedless fruits and the PCR test that they use, to say something is a GMO. There's a lot of stuff that people don't realize is going on. And if awareness is created, it makes change. And that's why I think when me and you've done our talks on electric culture, and when I was putting up a ton of videos, and I got a bunch more I'm going to be putting up soon. But with that topic, when I was putting all the videos out and they're going bananas and whatever else, it's changing the world. And people still to this day have the antennas and their gardens are thriving. And they don't have to use chemicals, pesticides, anything toxic. You literally just put a piece of wood with copper in your garden and that's it. Like it's so simple.
It's time and time again, the simple. And I love what you said there about how once you went down because that's how I first came across you, was about the electroculture. And then when you start going down that journey, as you say, you look into the tree energy, you look at all the easy water, everything we've been lied to, and then, shortage. And if the government really had any of our best interest at heart, which I know we're talking to the converted, we know people know that they haven't, but imagine if they just spent, if you want to sort the environmental problems out, then instead of getting people to buy stuff in plastic packaging that's shipped all the way around the world, just teach them to grow their own food. It's really that simple.
Well, yeah, and that's their tactic of how to control people.
Mm,
I mean, the government has been doing a lot of these things for a very long period of time. I was actually going through, I put up a video the other day of all the lies for the last 100 years, such as vaccines are safe, the moon landing, stuff with the 1919 Kansas flu, how people should take a vaccine and wear a mask. I mean, the list goes on and on. They've been doing this for a long period of time. Before they were doing it in America, they were doing it in Europe.
yeah.
They were vaccinating people in the 1600s. And it was interesting because in Europe, when they vaccinated people in the 1600s, they would go and burn down the doctor's house who tried to do that stuff to them, or they would kick them out of the city because they realized that when that doctor came in and vaccinated the people, all of their family members were dying.
Mm.
So, we've seen a real big change when you think of the 1600s, people burning people's houses down, and now, 2025, where people are accepting something in which they used to go against. So, the good news is many people have woken up to this, but yeah, all of these, these government agencies really they are not for the people. And you can just look around and you can see that they're not for the people, even with the whole migrant crisis going
Yeah.
on. I know by you guys and everything else. If all the things were for people, then a lot of the stuff would not be the way it is. And it really goes against it. And when you get people like Henry Kissinger, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, George Soros, all of these names involved in here, they all orchestrate chaos so that they can remain in chaos. Because once there is chaos, then they can create order, they can create new rules after that. And people need to be aware of that. That's why when people ask, why does this perpetually keep going on? Because it perpetually keeps going on until the people say no more. And perfect example actually was Poland. They said, we're not having any migrants
Yeah.
come into the country. And they're just have no migrants. Like it's just that simple. They said no. So, people really have to realize the power of saying no, and I do not consent.
It's so, so important. And I think this is very interesting because I want to ask a little bit more about this tactic of distraction, because most people who are even starting to question things, the alternative media, as we've already discussed with like the ivermectin side of things, it's so easy for that to be hijacked to keep them distracted so that they're not actually getting out in nature, doing the things that are really going to make a difference. They're just listening to other people talking about things that are leading them down another blind alley. Why do you think that's been so effective as a technique? And what would you be your call to action for people that are listening to this?
I think this has a lot to do with the cooked food. This
Mm,
is my rabbit hole of things. I've been doing raw meat now for about 110 days straight, just eating pure raw meat. And
mm.
I will tell you, it changes your mind on everything. You think of steak tartare, you think of beef carpaccio, you think of sashimi. These are all raw meats that people were consuming for a long period of time. And I think the cooked food, personally, I think it actually makes people a little more docile. So even when you get into bread too, all the
Yeah.
breads, the grains, and all of this, you ever hear the quote, give them bread and circuses and they will never revolt. So you think about this. You have entertainment on one side, you have this, synthetic weird food on the other side. And I think that that has a lot to do with it. In certain countries, I remember France, they were revolting a lot. There's no fluoride in the water. They also eat a lot of raw meat when you get into their diet as well. So there was a lot of revolting that was taking place, but it doesn't take place enough on the grand scale to actually change. But I think that people also maybe have gotten comfortable with a lot of this stuff. You know, they see it and they get bombarded with it so much. So they're like, oh, it's perfectly normal, kind of like the skies, you know. And I go with this example, for example, here in Arizona, we have crystal blue skies like right now. And when the skies change, you know, they chemtrail it. Some people then say, oh, this must be just how Arizona is. And it's like, no, 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 no. It's crystal blue,
Yeah.
120 degrees every day. Like that's what it's supposed to be. So then when it's like 80, people are like, oh, this is pretty nice. And it's like, no, no. See, and that's the thing is people have gotten, in my opinion, they've gotten comfortable to these things
Yeah.
and they get used to it. And it's like this really weird, you know, I don't know, twisted relationship, you know, where a person is kind of abusing you. And I think that that's kind of what people have gotten used to. Because think about it, when people were born, they were usually born in a traumatic experience in the hospital. They had vaccines, you know, it's all forms of torture. So they've kind of already started with trauma. And then
Yeah.
as they're growing older, you know, each year they're being exposed to more trauma and then the school system and the parents and all of that. So it's almost like you've traumatized these people so much to where they don't say no. And that I think is the part that people have to realize that, like, even the government thing that me and you were just talking about,
Mm.
the government works for you. It's not the other way around. They don't get to do what they decide to do. They work for you. And when people start to realize that you can say no, and this is not how it's going to be, then things will change. But people have gotten where it's, like I said, they've bombarded people so much. And if you don't do this, and I've seen this too, you go against the grain, which I've gone against the grain many times. And
Mm.
people will say, like, well, you're not supposed to do that. Well, I'm going to do what I want to do. And that's what people have to go back into. They have to take back that part where they say, I'm going to do what I need to do to be healthy. And it usually doesn't include all of the government stuff and
Yeah.
everything else in which being pushed onto the people or flooding the countries with all different types of people. And then this is why, like, this is what's crazy is they're flooding Europe with a whole bunch of people. But if they flooded any other country with a whole bunch of people, they would actually just kill those people. They wouldn't
Oh,
tolerate it. So that's,
absolutely.
you know, the part people don't see because they're so used to, oh, this has became normal, but it's not. And so that's what people have to realize. And if you get into nationalism, because, you know, that's the whole thing, you know, having pride in your country and your culture is a beautiful thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just,
Absolutely.
it's in certain areas, even in the US and the EU and even parts of Australia too, where they've just kind of tried to flip all that. And if people don't realize that, then once again, they're going on board this agenda. And that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the food thing's an interesting one. It's so funny because regardless what side of things and belief systems people have got, I don't eat meat at all, and I'm not remotely dumbed down. So, but it's finding what's listening to, listening to your body. And the main thing for me is eating real food, as you said, wherever that might be in your location, because we live in very different climates, and also as unadulterated and as uninterfered, because any sort of cooking is processing. It's not highly processed, but it is. So I completely agree with you. And I think I also wanted to pick up on what you said about comfort, because I think this is why so many people, I heard you talking about the hot and the cold side of things, but I think this is why so many people like Wim Hof have been so popular, because comfort and convenience really do kill. They make you lazy. They make, we're not designed to be in a steady temperature all the time. Our bodies are designed to be challenged. Our minds are designed to be challenged. Every animal in nature is. So, how much do you think this addiction to comfort is really making people so controllable?
Well, that's a big one. You know, people are sitting in their house, whether it be
Mm.
with air conditioning or whatever else. They don't even go outside. You know, they're hooked on screens all the time. Now they're talking to ChatGPT, which is just so strange. You know,
Yes.
it's like some robotic alien stuff talking to your own phone and having a conversation now with a robot, you know, which is really weird. So yeah, I mean, this is part of, if you look at ever seen that movie Wall-E, you know, that's kind of
Yeah.
what it reminds me of. You know, they're all in wheelchairs, they're sucking on smoothies, and they're watching a device. You
Mm.
know, so I mean, if that's the future that people want, then that's comfort, you know. And if you look back in the past, what made people strong and powerful and vibrant and healthy and all of that is they had to work. Like they had to bust
Yeah.
themselves for even farming or for growing food, or if you get into linen or vegetables, anything, even animals and husbandry
Mm.
and the whole situation, it takes work, and that's what made the people powerful and strong. And if people get used to all this comfort, then it works against them. And it works against their health too, because then they're just sold pills, and these pills
Yeah.
just keep them in a perpetual cycle of health issues. And then they have side effects, and then they go get more pills. And then sooner or later, they just drop. And we see this still to this day. There's all these people who 50, 60, 70 just dropping. And it's like, well, you got the vaccines, you got fake foods, you got 5G, you got heavy metals in the body, and that can comfort, that comes back to it. So for me, like I go outside, it's 110 degrees outside. I sweat, I run, I sprint down the street. I do a whole bunch of stuff for working out. And I think that we need to do that no matter what climate you live in, because there's no excuse for us not to be connected to nature. And then even with trying to grow your own food, start with one plant. Even if you're horrible at it, start with one plant and see where you can go from there. And that's the thing is people just have to take those baby steps and say, I'm going to try this. Otherwise, you're going to be in a world where you're not really going to enjoy that. And then you're going to wonder how you got here. And that's kind of, the whole thing I think with the whole comfort situation is if we remain the same and we just keep doing the same, then we stay in these perpetual loops, and they keep engineering these events, floods, fires, tornadoes, whatever, outbreaks, whatever nonsense that they try to push. And I think that if we take initiative and go against that and work to be powerful and strong, then you're not going to tell me what to do. And even if you did, let's say they go, oh, well, your power's gone. It
Mm.
doesn't make a difference. Your water's gone. Well, you know how to survive without water. You know how to survive without food for whatever amount of time. That's the part that people also have to go back into because back in the day, that's what people had to do. And the more we have this comfort where ChatGPT just spits things out to you and you don't even question it. Well, then when they tell you to, line up for your 55 vaccines and boosters, you're not going to question that either. So it's important to break that. And the whole comfort thing is, I mean, even that, I would say the evolution of Cultivate Elevate is really
Yeah.
like where I started in 2020 to where I am today is so night and day of how I see things. And that's what we should be doing because it also comes with knowledge. We should be reading more books to gain knowledge. And as we get older, like you said, we should have more information. This is
Mm.
why they always try to take out the elders or the older people of the society because they have the wisdom. Because
Yeah.
they're like, oh, they're pulling that again. No, they're not going to fall for that. We already went through that 30 years ago. But if you don't have that knowledge now, well, once again, then you're in a comfortable situation where you believe the media who lies to you, and then the BBC comes out and then says that they put up a video on me about how it's all misinformation, and it's like I cited the books, I cited the sources. So if you believe it at face value, then that's also living that comfort lifestyle. So that's just my opinion on that.
Hi everyone, it's Catherine here. And before I dive into today's episode, I want to really quickly share something that's so important to me. I love hosting this podcast because it allows us all to explore those big questions, challenge our programming, and uncover the natural truths that truly empower us. But did you know my real passion's working one on one with animals and people, helping you or your animal cut through the noise, find the root cause of imbalances, stress, illnesses, or really just create a personalized plan that actually works for you? So, whether you're here for your own healing or you're a dedicated animal guardian, wanting the very best for your dog, cat, horse, any four legged or scaled or winged companion, I'm here for you both. I work with animals and humans, but I especially love helping the animals thrive. That is my real happy place. So, my recharge and reset consultations and online courses are packed with practical tools, printable resources, lifelong access. And the main thing is, you'll never feel alone on this journey. And they work. Just head over to my website and check out the testimonials. So, if you're really ready to take action and not just listen, head over to catherineedwards.life. That's Catherine with the C and .life at the end, and explore my courses and consults, or if you want to, book a free 15-minute chat to see if I can help, because it's really important we stop outsourcing our health, really look after our animal companions better than before, and start leading by example. Now back to the podcast. Yeah,
Thank
I couldn't
you.
agree more. And the sad thing is we're doing it to our animals. You know, I've got horses, cats, dogs, etc. And you know, a Labrador dog is designed to walk about 12 kilometers a day at different paces. And most people think chucking a ball for 10 minutes in the park is good enough. And the thing, I love the saying that, you know, if your dog's too fat, you don't walk enough. So it's like, so talk me through. I want to hear, you were saying you did a list the other day about some of the real big things that are that we've been so lied to about. And I think it's, for me, Matt, I've really realized it's so true the saying that the bigger the lie, the easier it is for people to think they'll get away with it, because you've only got to look at most of our political people in power are not who they say they are in any shape or form. So what's on your list of some of the biggest things that you've discovered over the last few years?
So I guess if you started with 2020 and the whole pandemic, you know, the
Yeah.
whole virus thing, the made up thing about viruses and bacteria and germ theory, and how, you know, those things are going to jump all over and get you, which they've never been proven or never been isolated to show that they exist. So they can't jump all over and get to you. So that would be the starting of that. Then you have the whole vaccines are safe, which they've
Yeah.
been poisoning people with vaccines since 1626, I found out. I actually was
I
reading
didn't realize it was that long.
the
Wow.
book, The Poison Needle, actually goes into talking about the vaccine damages that have taken place in the EU since 1626. So before they rolled them out in America and started poisoning people in America, they were poisoning all the people in the EU. So that goes back really far. And this is where the whole, you know, people say the snake venom thing. It's
Mm,
just poison. It's mercury, it's arsenic,
absolutely.
it's aluminum, it's heavy metals, it's poison. That's just what it is. So that's just another one, you know, that people are being distracted with. Then you go back to 2001, you know, with that whole situation with the buildings being demolished. They were demolished. They showed the things going off and the charges going off and them being demolished. And most people don't know that all the gold was underneath those buildings. So with this
Yeah.
whole gold price, you know, the gold has gone up. Rothschilds control the price of gold, but the price of gold has gone up, and then that gold was stolen, and then they can resell the gold back to the people. So you see that 1996, you have Bill Clinton putting an act in there saying that you can't sue cell phone towers for damages if they put a cell phone tower in front of your house. And this is where the whole, you know, cell phones and Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 5G, all of that is safe.
Mm,
And what people don't realize is that these cell phone companies write the safety studies.
yeah.
So they say that the technology is safe because they tested it on a plastic dummy.
Yeah.
So people have to realize, are you a plastic dummy? Like, think about, are you the long-term experiment? Because there are no long-term studies for a lot of this stuff. 1986, you got Reagan with the Vaccine Act. He
Mm,
put in an act so that they could protect vaccine companies from lawsuits. What most people don't know that in 1985, almost all of the vaccine companies were going to go out of business because
yeah.
there were so many lawsuits against them for damages that Reagan came in and put the act in to protect the vaccine companies. So what we're seeing right here, and just as a perfect example, is 1996, you got a Democrat protecting the system. 1986, you got a Republican protecting the system. And that is because all sides are backed by the Federal Reserve. They are all in it to be backed by the Federal Reserve. We go back in time, you got 1976. 1976, you got the swine flu. This
Yeah.
is where they fast tracked, we've heard that word before. They fast tracked the vaccine into 40 million people, and the government paid out $100 million in damages because of all of it that they started putting into people. When they first were rolling it out and they were doing all those little like setups and camps to stick people and whatever, a whole bunch of people just started dropping right there on the spot. So what they said was a pig flu was jumping all over. So it's always a they realized that the bacteria, viruses, you know, that nonsense wasn't going to work. So then they started orchestrating it to animals, you
Yeah.
know, the pig flu and the chicken flu and the bird flu and all these other things because now they got to use something else. So that was 1976. They also did an energy crisis around that time where we were allegedly running out of oil, which is impossible because oil is the bloodline of the earth when you think about it. So the earth there's oil that's always being created, just like water is always being created. Both are unlimited. So that was an energy crisis of 1976 to sell people that were running out, get them on that one. And it was interesting because there was a guy who created a car that ran on water during that time
Yeah.
because he said if we run out of oil, Well, we got water. Don't worry about it. Well, they actually took him out. So that's another one. 1960s, you got the CIA and the Operation Honeypot, MK Ultra, giving people drugs, just regular people, giving them drugs, and then seeing what would happen when you give them a bunch of drugs, and then funding the hippie movement, which was going on
Yeah.
at that time. You did have a lot of people against war because of Vietnam and that whole situation. That's where Agent Orange and that whole situation was pushed onto people. And there were a lot of people who were against it because they saw World War II and they already understood that. Then you go 1950s and we're going polio. This is the classic one. Well, when we rolled out the polio vaccine, it saved everybody. Well, actually, it poisoned a lot of people and paralyzed people because the same symptoms that happen from the polio vaccine are paralysis and basically just your body falling apart. At the same time, they were spraying DDT all over the land, which was poisoning people. That was a product of Monsanto, and they were poisoning all the people and paralyzing people. And then they said, well, we got a vaccine to save you. And it's interesting because the government actually orchestrated the Cutter incident where they injected 200,000 orphans with the polio vaccine, paralyzing thousands and thousands of them. So, that's just another example. World War II, if we get into that, that's just the Germans, Italians, and Japanese fighting up against the Federal Reserve. That's pretty much the whole story of that. The only reason America and other countries entered in is because they orchestrated events like Pearl Harbor, oil embargoes to get the countries to come in. So most people don't know that the U.S. entered World War II because FDR put an oil embargo on Japan, which was going to cause them to run out of oil. So 3 months later, they attacked America, and that's what led America into the war. So you got that whole situation. 1933, you got FDR, and he says abundance is a burden. And he says that we need to cull all the animals, all your farm animals, because abundance is a burden. And we can't have an economy where we manipulate the price of corn and cattle and pigs and all these things if people have too much abundance. So during the Great Depression, what most people don't know is that they were culling most of the animals and destroying the farms and paying farmers to destroy their crops and destroy their animals.
Where
At the
does
same
that
time
sound
during
familiar?
1933, sorry about what were you saying?
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but where does that sound familiar? That's exactly what they've been doing over the last few years. Again, same playbook exactly. Yeah.
And that's why I like to say this, because if you see that then, you can see that today, and perfect another example is 1933, FDR puts in a little rule to take away everybody's gold because he knew that the only thing that you had was your gold, which made you wealthy. Also 1933, because they always use certain dates to do all their diabolical things. 1933 is the same date as which the Federal Reserve note, the little paper IOU monies that we have and everything else, that note was no longer redeemable for gold. So it became just basically a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So that was all at the exact same time. Then you go back in time, you go in 1920s, 1919, you got the whole Kansas flu. That's where they told people to wear masks. They told people to have vaccines. They told people if you didn't wear a mask, we're going to put you in jail. If you didn't take a vaccine, we're going to put you in jail. If you think of 2020, it's the same exact playbook 100 years later. It's orchestrated by the same people. And it was interesting because the Rockefellers admitted they never isolated the virus, but they still rolled out the vaccine anyways. And a lot of people were also coming down from an illness from the rollout of the radio. So they did the bait and switch. They got poisoned by the radios. Then they started saying you need the vaccine. And then it's the same playbook as 2020. And we'll go right back to the last one, which sums all of this up because most people don't realize where all of this is coming from. So in 1913, you have the Federal Reserve, which is started. So you have Woodrow Wilson, who is the Democrat on one side, and you have Nelson Aldrich, who is the Republican on the other side. Both of them have plans to put in the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is the printing, the unlimited printing, the credit system, because that's what it is. They don't hold anything. They're a private cartel situation that's set up by the Morgans, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and the Peabodys, which are actually also Morgans as well. But they set up this system, and then once they set up this system, they said, once we have the Federal Reserve, there won't be money panics or stock market crises or any of those things from here on out. Well, what's funny is they went from 0% income tax in 1910 to 75% income tax in 1919. So you can see how they were just siphoning the money from the people. And they also paid, this is where it gets wild, the Federal Reserve, and Eustace Mullins talked about this, the Federal Reserve paid for the war in World War One
Yeah.
to get all of the people to fight themselves because all the countries were bankrupt because they also had central banking like Federal Reserves in their countries. So they fronted the money to give them the war so that the countries could fight against each other. So they're paying both sides. And this is why I say all sides are backed by the Federal Reserve. The government, the state officials, the politicians, the military, all of these divisions. You have pharmaceuticals, the medical system, the educational system, the agriculture system, the energy system, all backed by the Federal Reserve. So until people realize that this is one big umbrella, then you can't see what's actually taking place. And the best book on this, so that people can read on it, is Eustace Mullins' Secrets of the Federal Reserve. It is one of the best books, and his stuff on this topic is phenomenal. Many people copied him and took his books and everything else. But he was one of the first people to bring this to light because he was with a fellow who was in jail for 13 years as a prisoner of war for something he didn't even do. And this guy said, you need to expose it. And he spent his whole life, this man would talk till he was 90, doing speeches and podcasts and interviews, talking about this so that people can be aware. So it's a long list, and I can go back further, but we're not going to. But it's a long list. And once you start to understand that, you start to see this money system, which is involved doing these things. And if you don't understand where this endless money comes from, then you can't see why all of these things that are like blinded over your eyes are happening.
I so agree. I'm laughing in that sort of way that you laugh in horror when you know something's right. But most people haven't got a clue about this because we all know our education system is completely corrupt. So when people are listening to this, and a lot of our listeners will have done a lot of research anyway into at least some of these areas, the next question is, what do they do about it? Because a lot of people, particularly if you've got a family to support, they're sort of a little bit feeling trapped in the system. So what are your words of wisdom as to what people that feel they're caught in the matrix at the moment, they're understanding they're caught in it, and they want to start getting out and changing things?
Well, I would say, creating awareness is huge. I think that people don't realize that when you have, for example, let's say you live in a community and there's 100 people who live in that community. If one person understands that smart meters and Wi-Fi and all of this is toxic or solar panels are toxic, the entire community doesn't have to go about doing the exact same agenda because you can tell your neighbors and your friends and your family and your loved ones, this is the situation and this creates awareness. And you never know what will create awareness. Just like 2020, you never thought that all these people would be like, I'm not putting this stuff into my body anymore
Yeah.
because enough awareness was created. And I think that the awareness is key. And actually, that's what I wrote in my book. As I said, the reason people are being taken advantage of is because they don't know these things and then they get taken advantage of. But once awareness is created and they have, for example, the right books or the right things to look into or the right things to understand, you can't turn back what you know.
Yeah.
If you read the book, The Poison Needle by Eleanor McBean, you cannot turn back what you have just learned about vaccines and how it goes back to 1626. So it really makes you see that, oh, okay, anytime they try to do that, or they say it's on, the news or BBC, whatever nonsense it is, then you're like, oh, okay, gotcha. All right. And then when you tell others, and you say this and you have this and this, that creates a ripple effect. And that's, I think, the most powerful thing that the internet has done. The internet, in my opinion, and I guess most people aren't going to think of it this way, but the internet has slowed a lot of things.
Yeah.
As much as things are faster because you see a flood in one country and then you see a flood in another country. So you're like, oh my God, the whole world is flooding. No, it's not. But you're seeing things faster, but they were already happening. And actually, it was funny because Eustace Mullins had a quote like that. He said, people are just being exposed quicker, but these things have been going on for a long period of time. So don't take this, it's the end of the world, because too many people get into that whole thing. take it as this is awareness and how can we move our generations forward. And this is the greatest part. I've had people where they have a family and they have taught their kids, they've taken my videos, shown them to their kids, or taught their kids electroculture, or taught them the things about the schooling system, or taught them this about the science or whatever it may be. That child is going to know this for the rest of their life. They're 10 years old. They're going to understand these things. That's the next generation. The next generation is probably going to be the most aware generation. This is why they're trying to do the AI and ChatGPT and push that, because they realize that so many people have woken up to the nonsense and lies, and it's only going to continue. So they're like, okay, now we got to push this plan. And that's the thing. If we continue to not educate ourselves and continue not to read in these things, then we move into the system. But the internet, in my opinion, even right now on this platform, this allows somebody to hear another side. Once you hear the other side, just like when I learned about World War II and all the other things, once I heard the other side, I was like, wait, what? I never heard that before, you know? And then you go and research it because you're like, you know what? I don't know. Maybe he's just making it up. Then you type it in and you're like, oh my gosh, this whole time. So that's the thing. That's, I think, the most powerful thing that makes a change. And a lot of people will feel stuck. I get it. A lot of things are always going on, but a lot of things are always going on. It's been like that for a long time.
Yeah.
It's not any different now. It's just now you're just seeing it faster, you know, TikTok and these platforms, but it's always been going on, you know? So we have to go, okay, well, what can we do as a collective to elevate each other? And I think knowledge and awareness is that, because even with electroculture, when I first started talking about it, it didn't move too much. It just whatever. And then one day, I mean, the videos, it was insane at one time. And I still sign on and I still get messages where people are trying this and they're doing it and they're having great results. And that's years later. And that's the ripple effect where people are fed up and they're over it.
I so love it. And I think that planting those seeds, it's such a cliche, but you just got to keep doing it. And also have something about you that makes people want to listen to you. I mean, I always make the joke, which I get told off for a lot, is like, you're not going to go to a class run by a fat aerobics teacher. You know, so if you're going to be talking about health, you've got to look after your own health. And the other thing is you don't need to understand all of this to the detail that you do. You just, once you start seeing the bigger picture, you get it, and then everything starts snowballing. You don't need to sort of memorize every single date and every single fact. You just need to get it to click into place. And when you think about it, what do young children do? They always ask why. And if we can go back to asking why in a polite, non-triggered way, then we're just away and running, because so many people are now asking why, which is just beautiful to see. It's really backfiring, I think, in a big way. Where do you see the current situation, Matt? I mean, there's so much, but, you know, in both our countries, there's so much going on. You know, take some of the stuff that's really in the news in your country at the moment about Obama, about the Epstein files. How do you view all that, and how do you see the significance of people starting to say, no, I'm not falling for that?
Well, the Epstein thing, for example, is a big one because that's the one that people aren't going to let go. You know, and when you have politicians going up and you have, you know, agents, and Eustace Mullins talked about it, that agency's been owned by the ADL since it was created, you know, so, and that ties back to Israel, if people don't know. But when you look at this whole situation with what's going on with the Epstein situation, you know, people aren't having it. I mean, that's, you're protecting pedophiles. Like, that's what is going on. And people aren't going to have a government protecting pedophiles. Like, that just doesn't fly. And that's why I think that, once again, the internet has done something where there is so much information that has came out that people aren't going to forget anymore. They've been taken advantage of so many times over and over again that they're over it. And that's kind of what I think about this whole situation. And if there's stuff going over by you guys too, same thing, people are over it, because you can only, you know, punish, because that's kind of what it is. You can only punish the people so much to a point in which they're just not going to tolerate it anymore. And I think that this Epstein thing, personally, is like the catalyst of the big one, because now people are going, wait a minute, I thought you're going to be doing X, Y, and Z. You're not doing that. Or same with like the Making America Healthy Again.
Yeah.
They're talking about giving AI and
Every
wearables,
wearables. I mean,
tracing people.
honestly, I sorry I interrupted, but I mean, you have to laugh at the irony of saying that they're going to try and get every single person to wear a wearable to make them happy. If you're an adult and you don't know whether you've had a good night's sleep, you need a slap. So, I'm sorry, but you don't need a wearable to tell you whether you've had a good night's sleep or not.
Well, and that's the thing is I think that because of 2020, people are seeing that what they went through in 2020 and they don't want to be treated like a track and trace system.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to push that, no matter what side you're on, like I said, red or blue or green or any colors that there are, they're all doing the exact same thing. And I think that that's the most important thing that people have realized. And that's the power that people have. Because once one person says no, there is a collective of other people who will say no. And they will try to keep, releasing other things like you said, the Obama thing and
Mm.
things like that. They'll try to release other things, but that's not going to stop what people have seen, and they're going to try. Then they were saying, I think they were saying that like Trump was sick or something, that he was ill. It's like you can pull all the cards you want, but you're still protecting pedophiles. And until that is actually even talked about or resolved, then people are going to realize that. And that's the thing is it's fool me once, it's shame on me. Fool me twice, it's shame on you, whatever it is. But the third time, because that's what I feel like, okay,
Yeah.
then it's
I love it so much. And, if Trump's ill, don't worry, Trump. You can grow back an ear within 2 weeks. So I'm sure you'll sort yourself. I mean, that's another one. That's another red herring we haven't got time to gain. I absolutely love it. And I agree. I'm watching with glee because I think this is the one they're not going to get away with now. People on all sides, I've heard some brilliant interviews about it. They are not letting it drop and they will not. And you can see the sign of a liar because look how much they're all squirming now. Look how much Trump's squirming. He cannot believe that people aren't just saying, oh, okay, on to the next thing. He's like, what? This has never happened before. So I think it's exciting times. What keeps you happy and not getting depressed with everything that's going on? I mean, you don't have kids yet, do you?
no.
No. I mean, as a mum, I must say, I'm generally a very positive person, but sometimes when I look at these things being thrown at my children, it can get pretty horrifying. But what keeps you sort of really positive and thinking it's going to be okay?
I would say spending time in nature would
Mm.
be the biggest one for me, because nature is pretty much kind of like you go outside and none of this chaos is happening. If I go on this screen, that's a different story. Then
Yeah.
there's the chaos that I always see. And all the time, too, some of this chaos is fake. We have AI now, so they can make all kinds of fake things and just put you into fear. But spending a lot of time in nature, I think, is the most important part. I spend time, I sit out in the sun, I sit in sun gaze, I sit and watch the chipmunks and the squirrels, and I feed the quails and everything else. Like we are meant to do that. And I think that's the most important thing. We don't want to lose ourselves, like you said, to this information, which is constantly, bombarded to us all the time. And it's done that for a reason. They're trying to bombard you all the time to make you go crazy. And that's why I say people need to disconnect and go spend time in nature. Because once you spend time in nature, you can come back and go, oh, wow, they were just trying to pull my leg, with that nonsense or whatever it was. And I can keep moving forward as a whole. So, that's kind of mine. I mean, that's pretty much what it's been. And I just like to put out the truth because if I was in the situation where I want the truth, I would rather people have access to the information than us being in this perpetual, blind reality where we just don't do this. And I remember it was funny back when David Icke said something. This was like 2020 when he exposed the whole fake viruses with Cowan, Tom Cowan. But it was funny because he said if there were a million David Ikes, everything would end. And if you think about
Absolutely.
it, since 2020, there are millions of like truthers showing the truth. And actually, yes, that has put a kibosh on the nonsense that they try to push.
I absolutely love it. And again, I was laughing because my whole life I've had loads of rescue animals. So, I'm up first thing in the morning with the sunrise at nature, with the nature. Same thing late at night. And I have had so much criticism for it, Matt, because everyone's like, why are you so busy? You can't go on your beach holiday and everything. But I honestly think I'd be a complete madwoman if it wasn't for nature. You know, I spend so much time out there, and the wildlife are incredible and they teach us so much. So I couldn't agree with you more. And you can see from how well you look that you're walking the talk, and you've definitely got a lot of it right. So how can people support you in your work and your business? You've got the amazing Cultivate Elevate, and I love all your products there because they're whole food, real, not synthetic. How's the best way for people to support your work?
So you can find us on cultivateelevate.com, and I put all my different links up there as well too. We also have a Telegram channel. I got a Rumble channel, an Odyssey channel, and then I also put everything up on Buzzsprout as well, and Instagram. And then we have TikTok and Facebook, but then they kind of censor those sometimes. But I try to put a little bit of information everywhere because
Yeah.
if you search Google and Elevate, you'll actually hardly find anything, which is crazy. Because I've actually put up close to, I think, 2,000 or more videos up on the
Yeah.
internet, and Google will go 3 of them from 2020. So
Yeah.
that's why I try to put it in my.
Oh, I lost you a bit there. But no, I know it is hysterical. So people have to sort of do a little bit of work, get around the censorship. I'll put all Matt's links below. Your products are brilliant. I've actually got a discount code for people can use for your products as well. Get some of these things in. See how good you feel when you don't use this synthetic rubbish and you go for the real thing. Matt, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your resilience. I mean, your resilience is amazing. You've been pushed off everywhere. You keep going. You get more positive. You share more interesting things. You're connecting the dots and you keep people really inspired. So, really, really appreciate all you're doing. And I cannot wait for your book. Let us know when the book's out so that we can make sure that everyone gets that. Because I'm with you. I think people need more books. I mean, our house is just full of books. We're all real bookworms here, but that's what it's going to be great. When do you think it will be available for people?
So I'm just finishing up the photos right now, and then I should pretty much be able to get it into production next. So I've pretty much ran through it a couple times. I've had to rewrite it about 15 times, but it definitely is going to have some information. But yeah, once it's ready, I'll let you know. And once it's all good to go, we'll definitely do another talk. And we can go through it too if you want, because there's
Love it.
so much to go through and so many names and different things. And I put a lot of pictures in there because I want people to see a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about. Because sometimes I've realized, like you just said, with older books, it's hard to see everything or visualize because a lot of the older books didn't have pictures. So I want to put a lot of pictures in there so people can kind of see things and really understand from every different angle. But once it's ready, I will definitely let you know.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for listening. I hope that you've learned something new today. Let us know in the comments wherever you're watching or listening this to. What are some of your big surprises that have really, really helped you see the world in a different place? Thanks, Matt. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. And above all, stay curious and stay free.